Hey everybody, what's up today? Out here in the tackle room, taking a few minutes, starting to get ready for the last Bassmaster Open here on Lay Lake. I got to leave here in a few days for that. Sort of trying to come out here and get a few minutes here and there, working on stuff between, working on some fish the moment stuff we're doing. And today's topic is sort of in line of what I've been talking about a lot with jerkbaits. Going to be doing a lot of different stuff as far as technique, tips, advice, that type of stuff on jerkbait fishing moving forward, because we're not in it yet. We're real close, but we're getting into the heart of jerkbait season. So hopefully some of these tips will help you get prepared for it a little bit better and have maybe some more success than you've ever had at it. But what I want to talk about today is probably one of the most, it's probably the most overlooked aspect of successful jerkbait fishing. And in my opinion, it's definitely one of the most important. Has a lot to do with maximizing the potential of your area that you're fishing, the bait, and just the size of fish you catch in general. So first of all, what I want to talk about is line size. Every angler that I fish with, a lot of people that get started out with jerkbait fishing, a lot of people that are wanting to learn it and maybe not know a lot about the technique, is all of them tend to have this mindset that like the 10 to 12 pound range is about the right line size to fish for jerkbaits in the wintertime. We're talking about wintertime jerkbait fishing now. And, they use a traditional, usually 6.5, 7 foot bait casting rod, 10 to 12 pound test line. A lot of people have went to like the Megabass 110+1 to get down a little deeper with that. And while that'll catch fish and you can do okay on it, especially in early winter, one of the biggest keys that you can do in your jerkbait fishing is to downsize your line. And I'm a big believer in going with as light a line as you possibly can with your jerkbaits. It's a couple of different reasons for this. First of all, you can make a longer cast with lighter line. And everybody knows I use spinning rods. So a lot of people, if you're using bait caster exclusively, it's hard to throw 6 and 8 pound test line on a bait caster a lot of time, which are the two tests that I use the most. If I'm fishing 6 pound test line on a spinning rod, I can outcast anybody by 25 yards if they're using 10, 12 pound test line on a bait caster. You can zing a Megabass Vision 110 like a bullet with 6 pound test line on a spinning rod. And why this is important is the depth attainment that you can get out of that bait, number one. And number two, which a lot of people don't understand and they overlook, it gets your bait down into the key depth zone for a longer period of time than with heavier line. For example, let's say we're fishing a main lake point, Bull Shoals Lake, water visibility, 10 foot visibility. When I throw 6 pound test line out there on a spinning rod, and I start getting that bait down, I can get that bait down like a Vision 110 into that 7 to 9 foot sweet spot zone, not only sooner, but I can keep it down into that zone simply because I've made a longer cast. The strike zone that I have is basically double of that somebody that would have like a 10 to 12 pound test, setup on there. And that is really critical, because you're going to find out in jerkbait fishing that 75% or 80% of your bigger fish that you catch are when your bait is at the maximum depth. It doesn't matter what the visibility of the water is. You get that bait down at the maximum depth and you got a lot better chance to catch a bigger fish. The line that I've set up on, there's a lot of different lines out there. People talk about braided fluorocarbon, monofluorocarbon. I've experimented with tons of different ones. I've been using Seaguar line for the past, 12 years. And the line that I use exclusively for jerkbaits is the Seaguar InvisX. And the reason I like the InvisX is it has a little bit more stretch than the other Seaguar fluorocarbons that they have, which I want a little bit of stretch. And also it's really supple casting, it's small diameter. It's the jerkbait line I use 100% of the time for my jerkbait fishing. And like I said, most of the time in the winter time, when that water temperature starts to get below 55 degrees, I'm going to the 6 to 8 pound test all the time, unless I'm fishing a situation where, say if I'm fishing a grass lake and I don't need to get the bait as deep in the winter, or if I'm fishing around maybe some super heavy cover and the fish are not suspended quite as deep, I may go up to like 8 or 10 pound test line, still on the spinning outfit, but I may upgrade the line a little bit, the line size with that. But another thing on top of that, as far as depth attainment, casting distance, is the action that you have on your bait. When you have the right hook setup situation, and I just did the hook video yesterday, and I want to clarify that from a lot of you that saw that hook video. I mean 3 number 5 Gamakatsu G-Fest finesse trebles. I think I said number 5 at one point, then I said number 3. Some guys sent me a note, called me out on that, and that was just sort of a brain cramp on my part. But I'm using 3 number 5 Gamakatsu G-Finesse trebles, the nano coated ones. When you have the smaller hooks on there and the lighter line, the action on your bait is completely different than it is if you're using 10 to 12 pound test line. You know, the diameter of that line and the distance that bait moves when you pull it is different, because when you crank a reel handle with 6 pound test line, you take up less line than you do when you crank it with like 12 or 15 pound test line. So therefore, your actions, as far as the subtle actions we're talking about, are going to be completely different with your line size. And this is what we're talking about. When you get that bait down in that sweet zone, you've probably seen this now. The guys that are using live scopes can probably see this better, but I've always been on the theory that if you're on a key prime point, I think almost every cast out there, you're pulling bass into that jerk bait, and they study it. They actually get within inches of it and study it when it's barely moving. So the action and the amount that the bait moves or doesn't move is very critical during that bite window when the fish is studying that lure. And that's just another reason that I've always found out that lighter line will work a little bit better. There's a combination of being efficient and getting the maximum amount of bite. So you want to be able to do both. I mean, you want to be able to efficiently cover the water that you're fishing. You want to be able to land those fish that bite if there's heavier cover with there. But first of all, you have to get the strike. And I've always been a big believer that in any type of fishing, that you have to do whatever it takes, even if you if you sacrifice maybe the ability to land some of those fish. It's more important to get that fish to bite and then worry about landing it afterwards. So if I'm talking about fishing lighter line, or I'm talking about fishing my baits in heavier cover and having a lower percentage of getting them out, I still am focused on getting that bite first over getting them out. So that's why that I'm using, the 6 to 8 pound test line. But anyway, to answer the question, I get this question a lot with jerk baits. What line do you use? This is it right here, Seaguar Invisex 6 to 8 pound test line. I use it on all my Megabass jerk baits probably 80% of the time. I mean, there are times when I will upgrade to 10 and 12 pound tests on a jerk bait, but it's on non-winter time maximum depth attainment situations. It's more situational around shallower cover, that type of stuff. But anyway, that's a big tip for today. Why don't I give you, just give it a try. Go to that 6 to 8 pound test line. See what I'm talking about. You get more casting distance. You get better action out of your bait. You get the bait down in the sweet spot longer. It's just an all around better setup, for your jerkbait fishing. So anyway, today's tip, that's it. I'm gonna get back to a little bit of tackle work here. Hope you guys have a good Thanksgiving tomorrow, and we'll check in later. See ya.